The bottom of the picture is removed as it's wanted by the FBI for subversive action against America. And the Klans people were laughing at Lou for the first time. So I said to them, you guys shut up. So he made a mistake this time, but maybe on the average, he might be well above the average person. I just got them to listen, then I ran a second test. And that was a record of a man speaking about aviation with a heavy English accent. So I said, Lou, what do you picture there? He says, I see a skinny Englishman with thick eyeglasses and a bald head. And then as he goes on projecting his own values into this English-speaking engineer, the image comes on later, and it's a black man raised in England. He says, goddamn nigger talking like an Englishman. How come? That's because he was raised in England, not the U.S. And if he was raised in Germany, he speaks like a German. You understand?
Yes, prejudice and ignorance. That's what it is.
So I have to inform them, not attack them. You have to inform them through motion pictures and experiments. Don't embarrass them in the presence of other people. So what I do is, whenever a person says to me, what do you think of this idea? I always say it's a great idea. It doesn't go far enough. That gets, what do you mean? They listen to you. But if you attack, you lose them. Do you understand?
Yes, and it's all ego. You see, in this case, the end or the means justified the end. You joined, you listened to the main person, they allowed you in, and you were able to make a difference by presenting your views in such a clever way.
That was also the White Citizens Council. They hate foreigners, so I joined that group and dissolved it. But you don't dissolve it with reason or logic, because they don't know what the hell that means. So you use motion pictures and you show them physical evidence, the same thing that gave you your viewpoint above others. It isn't that you're smarter, you've been exposed to more alternatives than the average person. So now let me tell you about changing other people. I did a survey in New York and I asked a lot of people what the most backward people were in the area. And they said, we don't know what the most backward people were, but there's an Arab group that believes that the earth is flat. So I said, I better try to change them. If I can't change them, I can't change the world. So I got to know the chief, the guy in charge of that Arab group. And he said to me on the phone, he says, you are Arab? I said, yes, I'm not an Arab. He said, where your father he born? I said, Lebanon. He said, come and saw me. Means come and see me. So I came to see him. And he said, you believe the world he round? I said, yes. He went, that means it can't be where he comes from. So he held his hands up, symbolizing the round earth. And he said, if the world round, all the water, he fall off the world. All the people, they fall off the world. You understand? That's his logic. So I took a balloon and I rubbed it with fur and I put cornflakes in his hand and just told him to hold his hand away from the balloon. As I charged it with static electricity, all the cornflakes jumped up to the balloon. His jaw hit the pavement and he said, world he magnet? I said, yes. Ah, and he explained that to the other Arabs. It took an hour and a half to change their way of thinking. But don't argue with them. Don't contradict their views. Just show them things that they are not familiar with.
Show them the evidence, right?
Yes, just like you do when you study science. When a man says, believe me, this is the strongest metal in the world, we say, what's its compression strength? What's its tensile strength? Remember, the language of science is not subject to interpretation. But when you open the Bible, people say, I think Jesus meant this, and another person says, no, he meant that. And the third person says, you're both wrong. That's why you have the Lutheran, the Seventh-day Adventist, the Catholic, because it's subject to interpretation. All our language is subject to interpretation. You're not talking to people, you're talking at them. You can talk with them if you understand how they learn, the learning process. And you have to introduce methods that they can understand. Don't speak of superior problems like particle behavior or atomic force. They don't know what the hell you're talking about. Symbolize it, make it simple. Really show them that plants cannot grow. They tell you in school that plants grow. They cannot grow unless there's sunlight, soil, moisture. Of themselves, they can't grow. The same with people. With insufficient exposure, they cannot conclude a sensible conclusion for prevention of war or anything if they don't know the fundamental processes of nature. We don't want to conquer nature. We want to learn about nature and live in accordance with natural law, not man-made laws. Man-made laws are based on nothing. Don't steal, don't lie, don't cheat. What do you think industry does? They lie continuously. They have the best products. For getting rid of headaches, every industry has got something to say. They got something to say about their automobile, about their airplanes, about everything else. It's all propaganda. And the reason for the small print is to make it difficult for you to want to read all that. So I would say that most industries are deceptive.
Many years ago, I learned a lesson that you don't treat people the way you want to be treated. You treat people the way they want to be treated. And in order to do that, you must learn from them. But Jaque, some people say you are a utopian. Can you clarify this for them, for
Yes,
people who don't know?
I'm sure I can. If you listen carefully, utopia means an ideal city, one that works perfectly well. There's no such thing. It's just like saying, here's the best computer. We can only design a laptop with what we know today. Next year, it'll be lighter, smaller, and do more things, just like your cameras today. They take pictures, record voices, give you information. You cannot design the ideal house, the ideal society. That's the utopian concept. The utopian concept is fallacious because there's no such thing as a perfect society or the perfect airplane. They always change every year or every 2 years. There are no final frontiers, no ultimate horizons, no best human beings. It's a constant system of social evolution. Do you understand that?
Yes, I do.
That's why there's no utopias. It assumes that here you have the best houses, the best system, the best education. No such thing. Education is always changing.
Utopian would be static, something that you've reached and you don't go beyond that. Really, the word means nowhere. It's a fictitious thing that people say in order to degrade the system. It has no meaning whatsoever.
You have to be ruthlessly honest.
And speaking of education, Roxanne, why is it that our educational system does not teach critical thinking? Those of us who consider ourselves free thinkers are that way because some faster than others have been able to break the shackles. Also, they want us to focus on A or B, and being a multidisciplinarian is frowned upon. Oh, you're a jack of all trades. What's your take on this?
Well, if they taught you critical thinking, they couldn't control you. You wouldn't go to work for somebody and slave away for 40 hours a week for minimum wage. They couldn't get you to do menial jobs. It's a control device, just like religion. It's almost like a gun to your head. So their advantage to keeping you dummied down, to be a cog on the wheel and go get a job. You have to remember, too, that everything that you learn in the system, all your values, all your behavior, your bigotry, your prejudice, is superimposed upon you not from the ground up. It doesn't come from people. It comes from the elite class that run the show, that make the laws, that you get your values through newspapers and magazines, your heroes, your TV, your movies, your entertainment, and your role models. And the values they superimpose on you is to perpetuate this system, keep things as they are, not to change things. So if you had the ability to think your way out of the problems, you would be called an agitator if you
Yes.
came up with other ideas, and you wouldn't go along with what's going on. So they give you a certain amount of education, and even your universities are on the dole through people through industries to keep things as they are. You can't learn new ideas. Jaque couldn't get in universities a lot of times, not because he rocks the boat, because he sinks it.
I agree. And do you have a proposed educational system within the vision of the Venus Project?
Yes, we do. Children are brought up to understand how nature works. They're taken in the forest. They're shown how trees depend on nutrients, and they depend on carbon dioxide, and how they give out oxygen. So children understand what nature means, but not a projected understanding. For example, sometimes I meet a person and they tell me that they're nature lovers. So I said, what do you mean by nature lovers? Well, I love nature. I love to walk in the forest. But they don't understand that earthquakes are natural. Disease is natural. Hurricanes are natural. Tsunamis are natural. So not everybody is a nature lover. We like certain things about nature. Do you understand? You couldn't be a nature lover and understand what I'm talking about. So people are not educated in this society. They become an art engineer, a mechanical engineer, electrical engineer, a chemist, but they don't know anything about behavior or social evolution. In the future, children will be taken through factories so they know where things come from, how they're made. They'll only be given information about the world we live in, no fictitious stuff. Fictitious stuff will be under the heading of fiction, science fiction, or fictitious ideas. Whenever you read about them, you'll know that this is what people think of, but they haven't been verified. And science will be taught as a verifying mechanism. In order to verify certain type of information, this is what you have to do. In other words, when I worked for the aircraft companies years ago, they would figure out the strength of an airplane wing. Then after they did that, they would pile sandbags on the wing and break it to see if their calculations were right. I love that system. It has no opinion in it, no bias. It's merely checking things out. That's all the Venus Project is about. It's something like the public library where you can access books. Only next door to the public library is a camera center where anyone in the community can access a camera. Next door to that, you have musical instruments. So when people have access to the necessities of life, they do not steal, they do not rob. It's only when they're deprived of things that you get aberrant behavior.
You have